Where are the Russians who oppose the war? Why don't they protest? Why don't they stop Putin? Why don't they fill the streets and say, "Not in our name"? The answer is uncomfortable. Many of them are gone. Not all of them. Not enough to change the country from outside, but a very specific class of Russians. Journalists, tech workers, artists, researchers, activists, young professionals, educated urban people packed their lives into suitcases and left. The departure changed Russia because the people who fled were often the same people who could investigate, organize, translate, build networks, question authority, and imagine a different future. Leaving saved them, but it also hollowed out the country they left behind. This is why I call them the lost class. Putin's war scattered a whole layer of Russian society, the layer most capable of resisting the system, modernizing the country, and connecting Russia to the outside world. So what actually happened to them? Where did they go? Who managed to rebuild a life? Who fell into poverty and status loss? Who went back? And what kind of Russian diaspora is being born from this rupture? I'm Elvira Bary, a writer born in the Soviet Union. And today I want to take you inside the world of the anti-war Russians who fled after the invasion of Ukraine and show you what exile did to them, to their families, and to Russia itself. Here's our roadmap. The first wave. Who left when the invasion began? The mobilization panic. How men ran when the war came for them. Where they scattered. How exile split by class, profession, and passport. The ones who could not leave. Why escape was never available to everyone. The life downgrade. How freedom often begins with lost status. The family cost. How the war broke families far from Russia. The new diaspora. What this exiled nation may become. If you'd like to keep getting this kind of deep dive analysis, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also join my think tank, support through PayPal or Super Thanks, or tap Hype Points. And if you are listening on Spotify, follow the show there too. It really helps. Now, let's begin with the first wave. The people who understood almost immediately that the Russia they knew was gone. The first wave. On February 24, 2022, many Russians woke up in a country they recognized and didn't recognize at the same time. The tanks were crossing into Ukraine. The word war was already dangerous. Police were grabbing people at anti-war protests. The familiar grey authoritarianism had turned into something much darker, almost overnight. And among a certain kind of Russians, the conclusion was immediate. We have to leave now. These people were journalists, researchers, NGO workers, artists, and IT professionals who had spent years telling themselves that Russia was still livable. Now the illusion collapsed. The state made the message very clear. If you call the war a war, you may go to prison. If you work for an independent newsroom or a foreign NGO, your work may become impossible. This is when the Russian middle class farewell ritual began. The first people to leave were often the people with skills and status that could travel. A software engineer, designer, or journalist can work from any place that has internet. A scholar can look for a fellowship. An activist can hope for a humanitarian visa. But a dentist cannot put the clinic into a backpack. A small factory owner cannot roll it up and carry to Armenia. So the first escape was also a privilege. For the Kremlin, this was actually useful. The people who left were exactly the people who could have made Russian society harder to control. The people who knew how to organize, investigate, build networks, translate Russia for the outside world, and tell other Russians that the emperor was naked. That is the first tragedy of this exile. Leaving saved people, but it also hollowed out the country they left behind. The mobilization panic. The second immigration wave came in September 2022, and it was different. When Putin announced partial mobilization, the invisible contract broke for hundreds of thousands of men. Before that moment, many could live with the war as background noise. Mobilization destroyed that distance. Suddenly, the state might knock on your door. This is when Verkhny Lars became one of the symbols of Putin's Russia. The border crossing between Russia and Georgia turned into a long line of cars and exhausted men. People waited for hours, sometimes days. Some crossed by car, some walked, some used bicycles or scooters because rumors spread that cars were stuck, but individuals might move faster. Everyone feared the same thing. The border will close before I get through. It was a very Russian kind of terror. Thousands of men trying to slip through the last open door before the state remembered to lock it. Georgia was not the only route. Men went to Kazakhstan, Armenia, Turkey, Serbia, Finland, while the northern route still worked. Anywhere that seemed reachable. Flights sold out quickly and became absurdly expensive. Not every man who fled mobilization was anti-war in a moral sense. Some were. Some truly opposed the invasion, hated the regime, and had been looking for a way out for months. But others had supported the war quietly, or ignored it, or repeated the usual phrases about NATO, Nazis, and our boys. They didn't mind the war as long as it stayed far away. What they minded was becoming infantry. The panic at the borders showed something the propaganda tried to hide. Under the patriotic noise, millions understood perfectly well that the army was not a place of honor. It was a place where you could be used, beaten, undertrained, badly equipped, and sent to die for a few meters of ruins. If most Russians truly believed the television story, the lines would have gone in the other direction. Men would have rushed toward recruitment offices. Instead, they rushed toward Georgia, where they scattered. Where did all these people go? Their first destination was wherever Russians could enter fast, undeterred by visa restrictions. Georgia, Armenia, Kazakhstan, Turkey, Serbia. Many people right there with no clear plan beyond one thought: escape Russia. From these transitionary hubs, IT workers went wherever their companies could relocate them. Some stayed in Armenia, Georgia, Serbia, and Turkey. Others went to Cyprus or the Gulf. For many of them, exile was painful, but possible. Their clients could still be abroad. Their work could survive borders. Academics, researchers, journalists, and political activists often looked toward Europe. Berlin became one of the symbolic capitals of anti-war Russia. The networks were already there. Universities, foundations, media projects, human rights organizations, Russian-speaking opposition circles. Artists and public figures moved differently. Some went to Israel, some to Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, and France. The countries that already had large Russian-speaking diasporas that could become their audience. Some made the bigger leap to the United States. Business people followed money and legal convenience. Dubai, Cyprus, Turkey, Armenia, Serbia. Places where they could open bank accounts and register companies. Dubai became especially important because it offered distance from sanctions pressure, luxury infrastructure, and a familiar language of money. Portugal became another interesting point on the map. Before the war, it was already attractive to Russian-speaking, remote workers and families looking for a softer European climate. After 2022, That community became more visible. Sun, relative safety, EU status, and existing Russian-speaking services made Portugal feel possible for many. And then there is the United States. For Russians who had enough money or enough stubbornness, America became the farthest form of escape. I see this in Orange County with my own eyes. Before the war, Russian speech here was not something you heard on every corner. Now I hear it all around. The ones who couldn't leave. Just leave Russia sounds simple only from outside. To actually leave, you need money and documents. You need the kind of work that can survive relocation and the nerve to start over, and no dependence to pull you back by the sleeve. Many people lacked this. If your work was tied to a Russian license, you were trapped. A doctor, lawyer, teacher, civil servant, small manufacturer, restaurant owner, farmer. These are not lives you can fold into a carry-on. If your business had employees, equipment, suppliers, and clients inside Russia, leaving meant abandoning people who depended on you and property that could be seized, stolen, or destroyed by paperwork. If your parents were old, you face another trap. Who takes care of them? Russian families often run on informal care. There is no Western machine that smoothly takes over when adult children leave. Children also held people in place. Schools, exams, medical issues, shared custody, and fear that a child would collapse in a foreign classroom. And then there was money. Many could live for a month. Few could fund a new life for a year. Rent abroad rose fast in the places Russians went. Bank cards stopped working, trapping their savings. Local jobs were scarce. Even remote work disappeared. So people returned, not because they suddenly loved Putin, but often because exile ate through their savings, their visas failed, and their income collapsed. For public people, the trap was even more visible. Actors, singers, athletes, directors, influencers. Anyone with a name could be forced into loyalty theater. Sign a letter. Give an interview. Perform for soldiers. Donate for the right cause. Once you have spoken publicly, the trap tightens. You have marked yourself. You may privately hate the war, but now your public face belongs to it. To reverse course means losing work, audience, protection, maybe freedom. That is why we should be careful with easy judgment. Yes, silence helped the regime. Public support helped the war. But Russia's trap was built through decades of making every adult choice expensive, dangerous, and lonely. The people who left paid one price. The people who stayed paid another. The Life Downgrade. For many Russians who left after 2022, exile meant a sudden fall in status. In Russia, a person had a profession and personal network. A friend who knew a mechanic, a cousin who could recommend a lawyer, a neighbor who could pick up the child from school. Then all of that vanished. A lawyer becomes nobody because the law is different. A doctor cannot practice because the diploma is not recognized. An engineer discovers that the local market wants certificates, references, and experience inside that country. So they take the work they can get. Men drive trucks, deliver food, or repair homes. Women bake, clean, work in beauty salons, or become caregivers for elderly people. Or they start tiny businesses from home, selling homemade cakes through Telegram or taking clients for hair or manicures. The Russian-speaking economy grows from this need. People hire each other because shared language creates trust. In Orange County, I see this new economy forming in real time. One person does repairs, another moves furniture, Someone helps with documents. Someone teaches children math in Russian because the parents are terrified the child will lose the old school level. It looks like community, and it is, but it is also a trap. If you work only with Russians, your English grows slowly, and your access to the wider economy stays limited. Without that access, you have to keep working inside the Russian-speaking circle. Many immigrants try to study, learn the language, and obtain local qualifications, but studying after a full work day, when your body wants sleep and your brain is tired, is too hard. So many drop out. This is why starting over sounds much clearer than it feels. Putin's war forced millions to choose between dignity and stability. And for many who choose dignity, the bill arrived in rent, fatigue, and blistered hands. The family cost. War follows families even after they cross the border. For small children, immigration is much easier. They absorb the new world through cartoons, classmates, and playgrounds. In a year, a child may sound almost local. The parents are proud and wounded at the same time, because the family hierarchy shifts. In Russia, the parent explained the world to the child. Abroad, the child starts explaining the world to the parent, reading the school notice, helping fill out the form, translating at the doctor's office, and correcting the parent's pronunciation. The parent loses authority and the child gains power too early. Teenagers have it worse. A small child is still building identity, but the teenager already has one: friends, style, school status. Immigration cuts through all of that with a knife. A 15-year-old thrown into a foreign school experiences humiliation, bad language, and loneliness. Some adapt and become stronger. Some turn inward. Some become angry at everything Russian, including their parents. Others cling to Russian-speaking circles because that is the only place where they still feel intelligent and funny. Now put this inside a marriage. Before exile, many marriages survived on routine. Familiar jobs, friends, apartments, social status, small habits. Remove all of that, and the marriage stands naked. Sometimes there's not much there. Men can be hit especially hard by status loss. A man who had a good job in Moscow becomes a driver, mover, delivery worker, or unemployed husband in a country where his wife suddenly handles the school, the doctor, the landlord, the paperwork. Many cannot accept that fall and become embittered. Divorce grows from these small daily defeats, not always with screaming, sometimes quietly. Two people simply stop walking in the same direction. One wants integration, while another wants return. One admits their old life in Russia is gone, and another keeps pretending the family is only temporarily away. The new diaspora. So what is this new Russian diaspora? Compared with the early post-Soviet diaspora, this wave is bigger, faster, more digital, more politically wounded, and much more divided. Some left because they opposed the war. Others left because they feared mobilization. Some left because their companies relocated them and still do not know what they believe. Put them all in one Telegram chat, and you get endless arguments. Who is guilty? Who is a victim? Should Russians apologize to Ukrainians? Is it shameful to speak Russian in public? Is it cowardly to leave? Is it stupid to stay? Is it possible to love a culture when that culture now arrives with missiles? I see this every day on my Russian Facebook page, where I post the same texts as I do on my English one. Every time they spark long comment threads, from thoughtful observations to outright curses. By the way, if you'd like to see more posts and photos from me, join me on Facebook. The new diaspora also faces moral suspicion. Many Ukrainians do not want to hear Russian explanations. And frankly, why should they rush to comfort people from the aggressor country? Their cities were bombed. Many lost their homes or close ones. A Russian who lost status abroad didn't lose what a Ukrainian under Russian attack lost. At the same time, some Russian exiles did risk real consequences. They protested, donated, volunteered, helped refugees, and tried to preserve a different Russian voice from abroad. But there's still the central weakness. Inside Russia, they lost access to the mass audience. Outside Russia, they grapple with immigration stress, rent, legal status, language, shame, fatigue, and the constant need to survive. Still, this diaspora will matter in the long run. Children are growing up bilingual. New media networks are forming. Russian-speaking professionals are entering Western schools, companies, clinics, universities, trades, and local politics. Small businesses are appearing. Book clubs, theater groups, podcasts, anti-war communities, cultural projects, and exile schools are being built. This is how a diaspora becomes real. First survival, then memory, then institutions. The question is what kind of Russian identity it will carry. Will it be the old imperial nostalgia with better coffee? Or will it finally become something Russia itself almost never allowed? A culture without a state standing over it with a stick. That may be the most important historical outcome. Before you go, I want to ask you something very concrete. Have you noticed more Russian speech where you live since the war began? In cafes, schools, playgrounds, grocery stores, apartment buildings, local Facebook groups. And if this video helped you see this exile story more clearly, please like the video and subscribe. Share it with one person who has noticed new Russian-speaking neighbors and wondered who they are. And if you want to support this work directly, you can join my think tank. Leave a super thanks, support through PayPal or tap Hype Points to help this episode travel further. And for those listening on Spotify, follow the show so you don't miss the next one. Thank you for watching. See you next time.